friends. So, welcome to each and every one of you. Some of us we meet frequently, some of us been a really long time in that we've met, and it's truly fortunate that small events and occasions like these where we can get together and connect. Otherwise, in today's highly hectic, highly fast-paced world, where it's always just next, getting up in the morning, get to work, get back home, if lucky, maybe have some other activity or hobby that keep us engaged, that we are busy in, keep us engaged with. But when it was a chance that we actually got to sit down and meet? When was it a chance we could sit down, chat, and ask truly, how are you? When I ask how are you, it's not how are you, how is your health-wise, but how are the you inside you? How is your soul? How is your hal? How is your state? Are you at peace? Or are you just always in stress and anxiety in a state where I'm not even present and I don't know who I am anymore? It's truly events like these that we stop, and not just when we meet, but ask ourselves, what am I always running towards? What am I always after? It's October, November, December, and yet it will be yet another year end. And yet another year end, we'll be asking ourselves, where did the year go by? Year after year, we've set resolutions. Year after year, I've set goals. And year after year, achieve some of them, not achieve some of them. Some of them I were extremely optimistic about, not got there. Some of them I have perhaps did very well. But assuming if I had smashed every single goal of mine, assuming that forget the goal, assuming that whatever so-called, if any goal I've set for myself in my life, if I've hit every one of those goals right now, assuming I've surpassed and I got everything in the world that I ever wanted, yet I have this drive and energy, would I still be satisfied? I've got everything that I wanted. Why is this yearning not stopping? Why am I still craving for more? Has anybody else felt like that? Can you see a show of hands? Or is it just me? If that's you, this book is dedicated to you. If I read from the dedication of this, from the first page, dedication. This book is dedicated to all those seekers who know at the bottom of their heart that there is more to life than what has been on offer. More to life than good jobs, education, money, power, politics, women, men. They know that whatever is thrown on the quantitative scale for acquisition is never going to be enough. This book is for the ones who are discovering the true treasure of treasures, the wealth beyond wealth, the source of life and ultimate joy within the core of their being, the soul within one's heart. So, I don't know how I came across this book. It was through some stray email, so stray YouTube video. I downloaded it on my Kindle and it stayed there for some time. Maybe when I had nothing to read and nothing else came up, I started browsing it. But when I started, it spoke to me. It connected with me unlike other books have in the past. And as I read section after section, I said, oh my gosh, I know somebody who would really like this, and I would buy a copy on Amazon and gift it to them. And then I read a little bit more and I bought a copy and I connected them. And ultimately I gave 10, 15, 20 copies out. Some of you are here who received 2 copies from him. Most of you are not, so I've got something even better for you. So don't feel left out. The Haj Mustafa writes, we are essentially a soul or spirit caught within space-time, experiencing itself as body and mind. They give rise to an illusion of being separate from that very soul. What soul? The one reality, one light residing at the core of every perceivable thing. The light that is source of all the hidden treasure within the heart of every human being. Anyway, this might sound all very a little bit too woo and too esoteric to actually sit there, yet maybe as part of it may penetrate and connect. But that's not what the book is about. The book is essentially a story after story after story, a story. Stories which might sometimes feel, oh, this has happened something to me as well. Stories, oh my gosh, how could this ever happen? But each of these stories point to a greater reality. You realize, oh my gosh, there's a greater reality than what I see and perceive. Sometimes I see and experience it, and sometimes how could I miss it? And now I'm going to start paying more attention. And I had this routine where I would just read a section of the book, maybe a few pages, maybe a chapter, and go every night before going to bed. And I would sit, think, and reflect on it. And as I would do this night after night, next morning, somewhere in the middle of my journey of reading this book and day, I get a message. And the message is from the author of the book. Have you ever read a book and while reading it and the author of the book messages you? And Haj Mustafa messages me, dear Arif, I hear from my friend, so-and-so friend, that you wanted to connect with me. Tell me, what can I do for you? So it was I felt I was becoming a story within the story. And I wrote to Haj Mustafa immediately back, wow. I'm truly honored to receive a message from you. Each night as I settle into bed, I read one story from your book. I find solace and wisdom in your words. Imagine my surprise and delight that upon waking, I find a message from the author on my very phone. Anyways, one interaction after another, I happened to share a story with a few friends. I happened to share the story with my father, and that led me to meeting more friends. And eventually, I don't know how, but the author of the book is over here. So for those of you who haven't received a copy of the book, I'm gifting you something even more precious. Not for today, not only you may get a copy of the book, but a chance to meet the author himself. I think those who got the book, very few of them are over here. So with that, it's my great honor, great privilege to invite respected David Starling, and together a great respected Sheikh Muslim. Please will come and join the stage, and please do share with us your journey and your thoughts.
Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Really, what Brother Akil just mentioned, it goes to the root of, as he has said, the stories in this book. He touched on us the dilemma that each one of us faces every day. We are living our lives as it unfolds. Some of us are Muslim, some of us are not. It doesn't matter really as it applies to what I want to talk to you about. But we wonder, why is it that I've been now struggling all these years as a Muslim, going to the mosque, going to the temple, making puja, or whatever it is that you do to uplift your life and remember the everlasting, whatever it is. But you wonder, why is it that I'm still anxious? Why is it that I'm still fearful. Sorry. Take this. Why is it that I still find myself fearful of the future and mulling over the past? Why am I not in the present? Why has my life not changed? And this is the issue that faces every one of us. In reality, all of us know, if you are a Muslim or whatever, you know that you have a soul. And it's not just a woo-woo thing. It is the basis of all things. It is where the soul is the driver of your existence. And that soul, as it says in the Quran, is bil amri Rabbi. It is by the order of Allah. What does that mean? One must really dive into this. By the order of Allah means that that very soul that you have within you is connected seamlessly to the one and only, the light of lights, the light which is beyond time and space. When you begin to relate with that, and we are given so many tools in our deen, in our practices, to relate with it, to come to it, to resonate with it, to do sajda in that moment in where you want to dissolve your sensory life and experience something which is beyond that, so that when you come up out of it, you're revived. Because why are you revived? If salat is designed, when that particular action of sajda is to revive you, because you're diving into where life comes from, which is at the core of your being, which is the ruh bil amri Rabbi. So life for each one of us is like that. We are challenged every day by what is driving us from our soul to know. The soul wants only one thing, and that is only driven and is ordered, so to speak, and designed to awaken you to that which is beyond your separate existence. And that soul, as you know, carries in it also all the names of Allah Azza wa Jal, all the attributes, all the things that are of high virtue. These are the things that when you begin to acknowledge the soul, bend to the soul, resonate with the soul, these elements these names begin to manifest themselves. And this is when you begin in a path of transformation. Our deen, or whatever deen you are practicing, is designed for one purpose and one purpose only, is to evolve you, to transform you into a being that recognizes where it came from, recognizes what you need to do to disciplining the nafs architecture that we all have. It's an amazing thing if you think about it. Everybody is different. Each one of us has different fingerprints. And this is a sign of Allah's being unique. We are mirroring that uniqueness of Allah Azza wa Jal. So it means that every single experience that you have is unique to you, but what is not unique to you, which is shared by all of us, is the ruh bil amri Rabbi. Because as you know, we are created from nafsin wahida, one self. One self. And it's the biggest gift to understand this paradigm, these two zones. You have a zone in which you have in you something beyond time and space, pure beyond pure, and you have another experiential, ephemeral, conditioned self which experiences the world and has ups and downs and confusions and. So what is the answer? The answer is, if you enter into your deen and understand what you're doing and what we're all doing in this wonderful gift of guidance that has come from all the Anbiya wa Mursaleen, ones that we know and ones that we don't know, this gift that returns us to our original authenticity. The more we relate with that which is authentic within us, you will become more authentic. Someone asked me earlier, just before we got here, or we're sitting at this table, that, how do you explain sajda? That when you tell someone, well, if you go into sajda, you should enter into timelessness. Not everybody will do that. But we need to practice it. It's like when you ride a bike. First time you get on the bike, you can't ride, you fall. You move, and then eventually you learn how to do it. And then it becomes, when you enter then the next time into sajda, you're a little bit ahead. So we mustn't, when we hear things like this, we mustn't despair that all the help we need is already in the practices that we have. And once we understand this paradigm, these two zones, a zone of the absolute, which is resident within you, and the zone of the ephemeral or relative, and that is your challenge. That is your path. Whatever Allah brings to you is unique to yourself. Each person is experiencing life, as you know, as they do, in a unique way, and every bit of it is an opportunity to return to the original self. So there's no room for despair. If you have despair, it's mind. It is the condition of the mind. It's shaitan, or however you want to look at it. If you have that and listen to that, then you will be distracted. If you realize what it is, and you recognize it, and you return yourself to that confidence, that authentic self within you, then you have on the beginning and of that alchemy of transformation. There are many people who say, oh, I'm too messed up. My life has gone already too far. I'm in my 50s, 60s, 70s, whatever it is. Even young people think this, oh, I've had trauma in my life and I'm never going to heal. And this is a lie. This is a complete nonsense. If you remember that you have that which is the soul within you, which has never been traumatized. Soul is light. Soul is the essence. Soul is the spirit. Soul is the driving force of the universe. And it has nothing can adhere to it. So if you have had issues, you've had traumas, you've had anxieties, all that, either you will work to have it be relieved in this life, certainly it'll be relieved to you in the next life. Because it's ephemeral, it's not real. I want to share with you a beautiful saying by Imam Ali. Many of you may know this, and this is the core and essence. This is what really, when I was writing my book, I kept referring to this, so that's why I have this at the beginning. And he says, your sickness is from you, but you do not perceive it. And your remedy is within you, but you do not sense it. This is what we're talking about here. You presume you are a small entity, just a creature made of cells or whatever it is. But within you is enfolded the entire universe. Think of that. Reflect that you, all of us, have in us that which is a representation, a home of that beyond time, beyond space, beyond blemish, foreverness within you. And then he says, you are indeed the evident book by whose alphabets the hidden become manifest. Therefore, you have no need to look beyond yourself because you are the book. How is that possible? Because each of us, as we live our lives, that is what you're reading at that moment is your book, is your life. And are you attached to what you're looking at the moment? Are you identified? Like when you get angry with someone at that very moment, and it's their anger is within you, and the person you're getting angry with is there. But do you ever stop and look through your anger? Come into your inner sight and vision yourself? when you see yourself, the anger can't continue. It's only when you're identified with anger that you will be distracted. And then he goes on to say, therefore, you have no need to look beyond yourself. What you seek is within you. It's only, if only you reflect. And this is the key thing, is reflection, is fikr, is reflection. What is the dynamic of reflection? Is that all these things that happen to you, you then do what we just described, is that you get angry, you step back in yourself and you look at it. You think somebody's questioning your authority. Well, who are you anyway? What authority? Who gave you authority? We all have, yes, we have relative little bits of authority here, there, but none of us can even change a hair changing, a wrinkle appearing on our eyes, or ultimately we don't have any authority. We are in the wave and flow of God's evolution and intent to be known. There's a beautiful hadith Qudsi that says, I was a treasure hidden, wanting to be known. So I manifested this creation to be known. Everything in this experiential world is stamped with the original intent to be known. So nothing you experience is outside of that matrix. Yeah, think about that. Nothing that you do, you say, your family life, your work life, whatever, is not outside of the original matrix, which is stamped with the order from the Creator beyond time and space, that he be known. And this is not about gender, he, she is. It is that reality which has beyond time and beyond space. My book chronicles an evolution of someone who could not at any time, as a young person, accept the dogma and the kind of conditioning that I was experiencing from my parents and from my upbringing. I grew up as a post-Holocaust surviving family. My mother and father were from in concentration camps, and all of our family was killed, and it was a very traumatic time in their life, and I was the firstborn in this country, in that country, where I'm from. And there was a lot of difficulty in terms of assimilating into the world around us at the time. And we were counseled, by our parents and by the people that we knew, no, you must stick to your own, right? Don't go outside of our people, because the rest of them, they're not like you, they're different. Differentiation. But something in me, very deeply, when I heard it and when I experienced it, I just couldn't accept it. I rejected it. Because everywhere I looked at that time, I saw people who are around us who were not Jewish or from Holocaust survivors, who had beauty, wisdom, light, humanity. There was no way for me, as I was looking at this, to deny that. So this was the beginning of a process, and I believe that it's not just that I had been a firstborn from Holocaust survivors, or that I had trauma in my home and all of that. It's something else. It's the light of the soul that was driving me to see more. This is not where your story ends. And even happens, it doesn't matter whether you're born outside of faith or Muslims. I've been a Muslim nearly 50 years, and I've traveled the world, and I've seen even Muslims who are from Gujarati families who won't mix with Memons or this or that, or I'm probably not using the right example here, but what I'm saying is that there's all kinds of that sort of elitism and tribalism that still goes on amongst us, all over. It's not just Muslims and Christians, Hindus, Jews. It's somehow, it's in the the mindset of people. It had its value when we were hovering down in a cave somewhere and to survive, and we needed our people to take care of each other. But when it comes now to a greater focus, a greater world, a greater expansion and universality, it's no longer relevant. Especially if it's driven by elitists, that we're better. And this is the act of, by the way, this is the act of shaitan, right? Shaitan is ana khayru minhu. That's the one thing when Allah was going to create Adam. It's the thing that shaitan objected, is he said, I'm better than him. And this is the same, we all have that. Every single one of us has that ana khayru minhu in us. Every one of us has that shaitan. And I began to discover that in myself and as a voice, but at the same time, I discovered as time went on, that I was driven by a greater force within me. And the more that force was driving in me, the more I became uncomfortable with myself and uncomfortable with the life that I was leading. So it made me want to seek. It made me want to leave behind, to do hijrah from habits, to do hijrah from mindsets, to do hijrah from identifying with a certain tribe or a certain religion or whatever it is, to move toward that which is beyond all of that. So as I remained in situations like that for a while, the more it made me feel bad, and I felt anxious, and I knew I had to leave. So I went on a journey. And I went on a journey because I realized there was more to my existence than to follow in this tribal, narrow perspective. And this is what Arif was talking about, because we all face that. And this is in my book. I do a memoir in regard to this, where in California there was, at a time in the 1970s, there were a lot of spiritual gurus that came, people like Satchidananda and also Tibetan Buddhists, and all of them were offering amazing new ways of looking at the world, looking at yourself. It was an exciting time, and I walked into it with enthusiasm and so on, but each place I went, whether it was in a Zen Buddhist temple or I joined the Hare Krishna, by the way, for about 5 weeks, which was actually quite fun, but that's another story. And I also went to the Tibetan Buddhism and studied also esoteric Christianity. I just could not find where my home was. And this went on for many years. So this brings me to share with you one of the stories that's in my book that exemplifies what I've just been talking about and sharing with you, and tells you in kind of in time how this played out to guide me to something which to this day I'm not able to be grateful enough. And so I'm going to take you back to, I was working for a Tibetan Lama in 1974. It was called the Tibetan Aid Project. We were connecting refugees of the Tibetans with American not PayPal, but PayPal would have been good, pen pals, so that they would write each other and they would exchange some funds and so on to help these people. And one day, I saw a group of people I'd never seen before. Beautiful faces. They were from Britain and France and Morocco and other places. And they had come to publish a book called The Way of Muhammad. I don't know if any of you have heard of it. It's written by Sheikh Abdul Qadir al-Sufi. He's an Irish, he's recently passed away, rahmatullah alayh. He wrote this book called The Way of Muhammad. And it was his discovery of the Muhammadi teachings. And of course, I was a Buddhist, but as soon as that book came off the press, I picked it up and I brought it to my small little corner of the press room, and I started to read it, and I couldn't put that book down. It was like it was reading my internal life, what I really felt about the world and how I saw existence. I'd never read anything like it that mirrored exactly what was going on inside my heart. I read the entire book cover to cover, from morning till night. Then in the evening, the Tibetan Lama, who was my teacher, and who I admired, I respected, he was guiding me, he came in the room and he saw the book on the table. And he said, "What are you reading?" And I said, "I'm reading a book about the Prophet Muhammad." And he walked with a cane. So he took it and he tried to swish it into the trash can, right? And he said to me, he said, he's not a prophet. These people are not, don't read, this is all not spiritual, right? And when he said that, it challenged me completely, because I just read this book cover to cover, but yet here was my teacher I put a lot of emotional and a lot of time connecting with. It was very hurtful for me to hear him say that. So I had to speak up. I said, Rinpoche is what I called him. I said, what is written in this book is true. I know it's true. These people are spiritual people, and I feel pulled and interested in this. And he said, if you don't agree with me on this subject, he said, you'll have to get out. You're not with me anymore. So I pulled all my courage together. I was, a young guy attached to this teacher. And he threw me out onto the, literally, he had two guys come and escort me out of the building and threw me out onto the street. And I was very upset, and I had tears in my eyes. I was crying. As I was there, just coming out, the 3 or 4 men had come to pick up the printed book. And they saw me, one of them particularly, a Scotsman. His name was Abdulaziz Redpath, rahmatullah, he's passed away now. He saw me crying and he came over to me and said, "What's the problem? Why are you crying?" And I said, "Well, I've been thrown out because I just read your book. And to me, it's 100% the truth." And he grabs me. The Scots are quite dramatic, right? So he grabs me and he punches me in the chest. He said, "You know why? It's because you're a Muslim, right?" And he hit me 3 or 4 times in my chest, as though he's trying to resuscitate somebody whose heart stopped, right? And I said to him, "Well, maybe I am." He said, "Look," he said, "you follow us now, come to our center. We're here in Berkeley, California. You follow us there, you come, and we'll talk about it." So I go to my car, and I'm about to follow him. Now, at the same time that this was happening, I also was an admirer of a Hindu teacher called Meher Baba. I don't know if any of you have heard of him, who I adored as a young man, and I had a picture of him, a very rare picture of a young Meher Baba sitting on my car dash of my car. And the Abdulaziz was a bit impatient because wondering why I hadn't yet come to drive near them. He came up to my car and he said, "What's going on? Are you following us?" I said, "Yeah, I'm following you." And then he looked at the picture of Meher Baba. And then he reaches in his pocket and he takes out the exact picture that he had in his pocket. And he looked at me and he said, "I love him too, but you can't follow him. He's not followable." So he said, "Put it away, let's go," right? So that was it. I went with them and we got to their beautiful center, and it was just at the time of the Adhan for Maghrib. And it just touched me. I've never heard anything so beautiful. I joined them in the prayer. I made sajda in this way. I used to make sajda as a Tibetan Buddhist also. Sajda is very much a universal practice, whether you're Buddhist or Hindu or whatever. Even the Jews do it also, but they do it, they don't let you see it. You have to turn around. I can tell you because that's been my experience growing up as a Jewish child. It's the essential in every practice. And I did the sajda with them that way. And for some weeks, I stayed with them every day, visiting them. But I could not give up my idea of the universality of universal spiritual teachings. I couldn't give up the idea that Buddhism, Hinduism, Islam, and all of that was all from one, and if you believe in that one, you don't have to practice anything. I held on to that, which is a very common view in certain humanitarian views and New Age religion. So at the end, when they were about to pack up and leave, I could not bring myself to embrace Islam. So I left them, and I wanted to see them one more time. When I came back to their center, they were gone, like they didn't exist. So 4 years pass. I'm telling you all this because I want to share with you that we think we're in charge. We're not in charge. God's in charge. Allah's in charge. So 4 years pass, and I had, by a wonderful serendipitous experience, I bought a restaurant. I was about 22 years old. And I called it Abe's Juice and Sandwich Bar. And I opened it up, and from day one it was successful, and I was running it. And one day, after owning it for about a year, this man appears in front of my door in a robe with a green turban. Now this is California, right? Maybe it's not so strange because it's California, but he appeared there with a robe and a green turban and a kashkur. Do you know what a kashkur is? It's like a hollowed out gourd that the Sufis and the Malang and people of the subcontinent in Iran and Persia, Afghanistan, the Darvish, he carries these things. It's called a kashkur. And in it was just a few, I didn't notice, but I noticed a few rags and things. He was standing there and he had a staff. And he's standing at my door and he says, "Who will feed a man of Allah?" Just like that. He yells it into my restaurant. And I looked at him, and my customers were all eating, and they were all shocked, Of course they would be. And they saw him say that, and I just felt like I had a touch in my heart for this man. I said, "Okay, come in, I'll feed you." So he came in, and he took a chair, and we gave him some food, and my restaurant was open the rest of the day till about 6 o'clock, and then I was closing it up. Everybody was leaving, and this man was still sitting there. And in a few minutes, I was closing the door and locking, and as I was getting ready to lock the door, he stands up on a chair in my restaurant, and he yells out, "Where will a man of Allah sleep tonight?" Right? So I guess he knew already got me, So I just said, "Okay, you have nowhere to stay?" He says, "No." So I took him home. And at that time, I was living in a, this is another story, which it's in my book. I was living in a hippie commune. And that commune was called Ishq, which was the Institute for the Study of Human Knowledge. And we all thought we were spiritual type people. So I brought him home, and we had a small sunroom. And I put him in the sunroom. I said, "You can sleep here tonight." He wound up staying in this sunroom for a year in our house. And he was wonderful. He stayed in the room, never came out. All night long we would hear him, "La ilaha illallah, la ilaha illallah, hoo, all night. And in the morning, when I was going to open up the restaurant, he would come out, and he would do this every morning when I was working. And he had a book with him. It was the poetry of Hafiz. You may know him, a great Sufi poetry. And he came out and he said, wait. And he put his finger in the air and he put it down and he did sort of like an istikhara, right? And he opened up the book and he looked at it and he said, no, you have to stay, right? And I'd stay. I trusted him. I trusted his heart because he was a beautiful being. Never asked for anything, just some tea. That was about it, and whatever we had left over. And then he'd look again, and of course it was a positive, and he said, now go to work, right? That was for 1 year. And the influence he had, this daily connection that I had with him, it grew until I really loved him. I don't even know why. I hardly spoke to him. Only saw him once a day, right? But he was so concerned about my well-being and so on. Then one day he comes out, and he's all packed up, and he said, who will buy tickets for to send this dervish home, right? And it was a sad moment, but I said, I'll do it. Yeah. So I took him to the airport, bought his tickets, and put him on a flight. And just before the flight, and this is sort of kind of why I'm telling you this whole story, he gave me a calligraphy of the Ism al-Jalal, the name of Allah. And he gave me a ring with the Panjatan ring, right, the names of the family of the Prophet. And I didn't know much what that was, but he said to me, put this calligraphy over your cash register. And he said, your true provision will come if you do that. So the next day I went to my restaurant and I put the name of Allah over my cash register. Weeks pass, months pass. One day I see 3 or 4 people walking in front of the restaurant, and I recognized their energy. It was the people that I had met 4 or 5 years before. These people who had brought me to their center, who had hit my chest, who had invited me to Islam. And they said, one of them turned around and looked into my shop and he saw the name of Allah over my cash register, and he walked in. He said, why do you have that? I said, because this dervish, and I tried to explain it to him, right? But he was kind of a Sufi Tablighi type, right? You know. So he looked, he said, you can't have that if you're not a Muslim, right? I said, well, he gave it to me, and he said, if you really want to know about this, he said, come to us and we'll tell you about it. So he invited me to a wedding, which was about 2 hours away from California, from Berkeley, California. It was going to be a wedding, and I was going to be reintroduced to all those folks who I knew years before. And I went to the wedding and sat there with them, and I felt so at home, but I still was struggling in my mind about who am I, what am I doing? God's for everybody, not just for Muslim. I was a bit still confused. After the entire wedding took place and everything was over, I went home. And that night that I went home, I couldn't sleep. All of a sudden, everything I saw in my life turned black. I saw my restaurant. It was wonderful, but I still was stagnant. I still wasn't, something was wrong. I had a girlfriend at the time. I just said, it's not going anywhere. This is not working. I was in this commune. It was getting old. It was getting awful. And I just saw like everything in my life started to get a gray kind of tint. Just that night. It was just that night. Everything, like. And I started to fall asleep. And as I was falling asleep, I heard some noise in the back. But it was in my dream. And I saw a beautiful being in a green robe and turban, and over his face was a hijab of sparkling lights and cloud. I couldn't see his face, but it was all sparkling. And he leaned over to me as I was laying in bed, and he said, come. He said, this is all for you, right? I could not. I woke up out of that with a feeling like that was like that being, whoever he was in me. He was with me. He was urging me on. The morning came and I drove all the way down to Monterey, and I said to them, "That's it. I'm going to give up everything in my mind about this, and I'm going to embrace Islam." And I did, and I became a Muslim there. I did what I would call. Is this okay? Is that okay? Let me see if I have this on here. Yeah, there I am, you see. This was when I was 21, 22 years old. And you see, oh, it's not in the picture. Oh, you carved it out, whoever did that. Anyway, there's a picture supposed to in the corner there with the name of Allah, and that's what I wanted to show you. Unfortunately, it's not there right now. But that was the restaurant, that was me, and there was a picture of the name of Allah there. I'm going to leave this picture up just for a moment, for a while. So that's how I formally, embraced Islam. I also want to share with you a story that, again, about how things come that you have no idea where they're from, how they happen, but they happen. After I embraced Islam with these people, they had asked me to travel to England, and they had a school, a kind of a madrasa in there that they wanted me to come and be part of it. And I didn't have much money at that time, so I was working, and I had met many of their community. And one particular man I had met, his name was Sidi Fadlallah, who was a very wealthy businessman from the Gulf, and who I still have a deep connection with to this day. So I prepared myself after working to take a flight from Atlanta, Georgia, to London, England. I only had enough money for one round-trip ticket, and the day I was going to leave, Sheikh Abdul Qadir, the man who by this time had come to know, and he was the sheikh and leader of this group that I had embraced Islam with. He said to me, he called me, he said, "I hear you're coming to London." And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Why don't you bring so-and-so with you?" There was a man, an Aboriginal Indian, who recently embraced Islam, so he wanted him also to come. So I knew if I did that, I'd have to take my ticket and make it into 2 standby tickets. And in those days, and you're probably all quite young here, there was a time where you could, get a standby ticket to anywhere, and they could change your ticket by putting little stamps on it or so on. Anyway, I bought 2 standby tickets, no round trip, and we took the flight from Atlanta to Dulles. Now, once we got to Dulles, the the DC-10s, which were the workhorse jet that flew from across the Atlantic Ocean, several of those jets had crashed within 3 months. I don't know if any of you may remember it. It was in the 1970s. And so here I'm arriving in Dulles, 3 DC-10 jets. This was the 3rd one, crashed within 3 months. And all flights that were going across Atlanta were only the new 747s. So they were completely packed, and nobody who had a standby ticket was going to get on, right? I wound up staying in that airport with this young man for 3 days, living in the airport. Every night we would go to the counter, and there was a man there, the same ticket agent. We'd walk to him and he'd look at us and shake his head. "There's no way you're getting on this flight. You have to upgrade your ticket to a regular ticket or a first or business." We didn't have the money, we couldn't do it. So we started living in the airport 3 days. The restaurants there were feeding us. They We used the bathroom by guarding each other to wash up, and so nobody would come in to see. And we had no idea how we were going to get to England. I couldn't call my parents because they all rejected me. I'd become a Muslim at that point. So I had no resources to go to, and neither did he, because he was a poor Aboriginal Indian living on a reservation. So we were stuck. On the third day, I was walking through the airport, and all of a sudden I found myself in the Concorde lounge. And in those days when the Concorde lounge, or the Concorde flight land, there would be, bells and whistles and red carpet, and there'd be somebody there to greet them because it was very rich people. And so I was observing the spectacle. And after observing it for a few minutes, I saw Sidi Fadlallah, the man who I had met a few months back, who was this very wealthy Arab from the Gulf, and he knew me and we got along. And I said, that's it. I'm going to tell him what's going on. He's going to reach in his pocket and roll off some money and upgrade our ticket. So I approached him and I went up to him and I gave him a big hug, and he said, "MashaAllah, Mustafa, what are you doing here?" And I said, "Okay, this is my opportunity to tell him my story." And I told him the whole thing, and he goes, "SubhanAllah, that's amazing." And then he reached in his pocket and he pulled out one of those glow-in-the-dark, plastic tasbihs. I don't know if anybody's seen one before. They used to be prominent in the 70s. And he handed it to me. And he said, "Say, Hasbunallahu wa ni'mal wakil, and everything will be all right." And he walked away. It took me a few minutes to cool myself down. I said, "What? Hasbunallahu wa ni'mal wakil, a green glow-in-the-dark tasbih? This man has oodles of money, and he just leaves me like that?" I felt really rejected. Okay. I got a hold of myself. I said, okay, if you're going to be the good Sufi, the good Muslim, say Hasbunallahu wa ni'mal wakil. So I started, after I cooled down, I took the tasbih and I started saying Hasbunallahu wa ni'mal wakil, Hasbunallahu wa ni'mal wakil. And we got to that night, the flight to London was coming up, and I walked over to the counter, and there the same guy was there, and he's looking at us, he's going, "No way." And I walk up to him, I said, "Really?" And he said, "No way." So I turned around and started to walk away. Then he says to me, "What are you doing? What's that in your hand?" And I'm going to myself, okay, this guy's probably a Christian. So I'll just tell him, it's a rosary. And I'm saying something. And he looks and he says to me, no. He said, "That's not a rosary. That's a green glow-in-the-dark tasbih, right?" So I said, "Oh my gosh." And I walked up to him and he said, "What are you saying on that tasbih?" And I said, "I'm saying Hasbunallahu wa ni'mal wakil." He said, "Do you know what that means?" I said, "Yes." And I told him. He said, "Why do you want to go to London?" And I said, "Look, I'm going to London because we want to study the deen. We want to go to this madrasa, improve ourselves." And he said, he said, "I'm a secret Muslim working for Pan American." That's what he says to us. He says, "My name isn't on his tag. It said Alan, but his real name was Ali." And he said, "I'm getting you on this flight." Within 5 minutes, he took our tickets. He took the tape off that said coach seats. And he put these little first class tags on our seat. And within a minute, he took our luggage. He escorted us to the gangway, and the next thing we knew, we were sitting there in first class, right? In first class, waiting for the flight to take off to go to London. How? How does that happen? And these stories that happen, that they're documented in my book, and if we have time, I can tell maybe one more. How are we doing on time, by the way? Where's the organizers? Are we okay? Are people not getting too bored? Okay. How do these things happen? And this is part of the reason I wrote this book, is to show that life is, you think something is one way, but it's actually another way. You imagine that the things, that your hopes and your dreams are the things that you're looking for, but Allah has another plan. And if you flow with it and you rely on it, then somehow you merge with it. You come into its flow. It takes you over. And things begin to happen in a way that is beyond your expectation, even more than your expectation. So I want to share with you one more story, and then we'll, if we want to open it up for some discussions or talk, I'd be very happy to do that. I'm living in England now. I lived there for a year, was with the community there. I had many wonderful experiences, and I want to share with you one wonderful experience that I had. It's going to require a little bit of being very thoughtful about this, because I'm going to go through time, jump around a little bit, so I ask you to please be patient. I attended in Birmingham. There's a big Indian and Pakistani Muslim community in Birmingham, in Manchester. So they were having an urs for this sheikh that was there, who had passed away many years before. And they had a langa, they produced food for everybody. And it was wonderful. People were doing dhikr, there was children reciting the Quran, there was service to the community, people were coming, exchanging used furniture. It was an event, of community activity. And at one point, there was going to be this big dua made in a huge circle on a soccer field. So I went on the soccer field and sat in this huge circle in which everybody was making dua. And the person who was directly in front of me, he was about this big, so you can imagine how far away it was, he was there. And I saw him putting his hands up and looking at me like this, looking at me. So I felt like I should, after the dua, that whatever it was, that I should go meet him. So the dua was over, and then I went to the other side of the circle. I couldn't find him. But I remembered his face, because it was a very noble, beautiful young man, handsome young man, that with a nice kind of interesting hat. I knew his face. Now keep that in mind for a minute. Now, I'm back in my community in Norwich, England. I'm living in a mosque. I'm living in the mosque of the community. They gave me, I had nowhere to live. I couldn't work because I was in England. I was coming to the end of my stay there, and every day I was asking Allah to provide me with some provision so I can leave England and go back to the States. And this went on for some time, and then one Jummah came. And in that Jummah, at the end of the Jummah, this Egyptian man, who I saw every Friday for nearly a year, who knew I was living in the mosque, knew I was taking care of the facilities. And he as he's hugging me, he reaches into my pocket. And of course my reaction was I grabbed his hand, and he said, don't do that. He said, look, I'm putting something in your pocket. Look at it, when I leave. So he leaves, and I look in my pocket, and it was a roll of 50-pound notes, about 750 pounds. Now, 750 pounds in 1977 was a lot of money. And it was just enough money for me to get a ticket, go back to the States, and I went back to America. I'm in America, and I decide that I want to do Umrah. So my friend and I saved our money, made the time, and that was maybe a year or two later. And we paid our tickets, and we went to Jeddah, and we took a bus. Probably a lot of you know, but we took a bus at that time from Jeddah on our way first to Medina. And I'm sitting in the bus with my friend, and we're talking, and all of a sudden I feel this guy is like breathing down my neck, sitting behind me. I didn't know, what it was about. So I turned around and I looked at him, and he smiled at me, but I didn't know who he was. Then a few minutes later, there he is again, right? He's like right here. His face is right next to mine. And I turned around. I said, what? He said, you don't know me. I said, no. I said, who are you? He said, do you remember that day 4 years ago, whatever it was? He said, I was the one at the end, that circle of dua in Manchester. And I looked at his face. It was that same guy who I saw, but I never met him. And he jumped over the seat, literally jumped over. He was crying. My friend and I broke into tears. He said, look, Allah brought us together, and we were hugging and hugging. And I said, tell me, what was the dua that you were making at that circle? And he said, I was asking Allah that one day that I would be with you at the Rawdah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I mean, and there he was with us, and we were on our way to the Rawdah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. As we were moving towards Medina, we didn't have anywhere to stay, my friend and I, because we thought we'd just arrive and find a place. In those days, you could do that. And we get there, and our new friend, he said, don't worry. He said, I have a friend there. He'll meet us at the bus lot, and we'll go to his home. He's a wealthy man. He'll look after us. He lives near the Prophet's mosque. Don't worry. So we wait, and then this car pulls up, and we're sitting there, and the man gets out of the car, and he hugs our friend, and he turns around and looks at me, and when I look at him, we both again broke into tears. That was the Egyptian guy who gave me the money in the mosque to leave England and to go back to America. These two people were experiences were 4 years apart. Yet here we were on our way to the Rawdah of the Prophet with this man, and staying at the home of the man who gave me the money originally years ago to go back home. So how are these are things that encourage you. They encouraged me to see that I don't know anything about what the reality behind what I see and experience is. But one thing it did continue to inform me is that if I trusted it, if I somehow harmonized with it, connected with that ruh which is within all of us, and be guided by it and trust in its attributes, that everything will work out. It'll be khair, it'll be good, ultimately. And it's ultimately like that for any of us, all of us. In reality, in the end of the day, everybody will meet their Creator, and everyone will be accountable, and most people, I'm sure, will be in a gardenic state, in bliss, for eternity. But in this life, we're given these challenges to wake up, to put aside the management of that we think we're managing our affair, and not opening our hearts to Allah managing our affair. Recognize that Allah is managing our affair. So this is just another story that's in this book of this type of incidences that happen. Now, I was going to follow a whole other routine, so I'm just going to show you some pictures and just make a few share a few things with you, and then if anybody has anything to say or wants to share, you're welcome to. I'm open for it. This is Sheikh Sayyid Ikram Hussain from Pakistan. He was a Chishti Sheikh. He died at 100 years old. And I met him originally in Pakistan in 1981. I was living in Pakistan in a small village near the Rajasthani border of India, a place called Bahawalpur, near Ahmedpur Sharqiya, in a very remote area. And he used to come and visit the local people and so on. I have so many stories about him in this book. I may tell one more before about him. It's a 5-minute story. I met him, and so many things happened. But I was with my wife, staying in Karachi, and my wife had a woman's issue, a bleeding. It was a hormonal issue, and we didn't know what to do. And Sheikh Ikram came to our home. He was a hakim, Tibbi Yunani, Tibba Nebui practitioner. And he saw my wife. He said, okay, this is what you need to do. He said, you need to go to the bazaar and get 6 grams of berberis and 6 grams of afyun. You know afyun is opium, right? Now, that's not going to go very well. An American in Karachi looking for opium, right? That's not something I'm looking forward to doing. And I explained it to him. I said, I can't go in the street looking for opium. He said, don't worry. He said, Allah will cover you, right? And I said, okay. And he sent me to a place called Karada, which is, I don't know if any of you know, it's an old mosque surrounded by shops, and inside the bazaar of Karada is the most, anything you can buy there. 1950s Playboy magazines. I mean, all kinds of stuff. There was also dawakhana, places for medicine, banned items, all kinds. So I went there, and I went to visit several dawakhanas until I met one. They all chased me away. They said, you go away, you can't do that. I'll call the police, they'll come and get. They chased me away. So I got frustrated, and I said, well, that's it. I can't do anything. So I started to leave. And as I left, this man was sitting on the ground in the path that I was about to take to leave the bazaar. Beautifully older man, chisti cap, beautiful shalwar kameez. It was dirty and dusty everywhere, with not a speck on him. And he said, come. And he grabbed at my sleeve at first, and I thought maybe he was going to ask me for money. So like an idiot, I said, maaf karo, But it wasn't that. He said, no. He said, it's not about money. He said, come and sit down with me. So I came and sat down with him. Now, he said to me, do you know why I'm here? I said, no. He said, last night, now this is the night before that day that Sheikh Ikram had told me to go to this bazaar. So he had a dream the night before to come to this place and sit here and wait for some strange person to come. And of course that was me. And he sat me down on his little blanket, and he said, what can I do for you? I said, I need 6 grams of berberis and 6 grams of afyun. Turned out he was a hakim. He had his hakim bag with him, and he opened it up and he took out, those scales, those scale things, and he weighed the berberis. He had 6 grams of berberis, and he had a bag, a plastic bag, with afyun, opium, and it had exactly 6 grams in it. And he packaged them up for me, and he gave it to me, and he said, we need to go now. And we both stood up. And as we stood up, I wanted to pay him like a stupid, I just said, and he said, no, he said, this is not about money. This is my bazor, my sheikh from in the dream came to me and said to serve, to do this, and I did it. And he walked away from it. I never got his name or what. So I took that home, and Sheikh Ikram had given me instructions on how to blend it together with a mortar and pestle, and then I made he told me to make them the size of garbanzo beans. So I did, and I gave it to my wife, and after about 6 hours the bleeding stopped. Later I learned that berberis and opium constrict the veins or capillaries in the uterus and other parts of the body, help the bleeding stop. But she got high as a kite from the opium, right? So the next day, Sheikh Ikram comes over and he sees her, and he sees she's high from the opium, but she's better. And he said, let me see the pills. And I showed it to him. And he's holding it in his hand. He looks at me and says, too big, right? So I thought they should be, and he cut them into 6. See, I was going on the American style garbanzo bean, which is like about this big, whereas the Pakistani dried one is a little tiny one like this. So I was overdosing her. But it was a very funny moment, but a beautiful moment. Anyway, I have many stories about him. He was a miraculous being, a hakim and a darvish, and a wonderful being. And this is another man who's in my book, wonderful being, Sheikh Abdul Mabud al-Jilani, originally from Iraq. He lived, and you're all going to be skeptical, but I challenge you to go look it up. He lived, when I met him, he was 158 years old. And he told me, I asked him once for his life story, which was a big mistake. But there were so many things that if you read the book, you'll get it. Wonderful being. He did Hajj 100 times. He had a signed document by Malik Abdulaziz, the first king of Saudi Arabia, decreeing that he will come to Hajj on the kingdom's dime, or the kingdom will pay for him every year for the rest of his life. I guess he didn't understand what he was getting into, because he lived for a long time. But he's in the book also. This is me when I was visiting the northern areas and met some Uzbeki and Mujahideen fighters. So they gave me a gun and all this. As you can see, I'm there in the center, and they wanted me to come fight, and I told them I'm not going to do that. But they said, well, let's take a picture, maybe you'll change your mind, So I stayed with them for 3 days. There's more in the book about this, and there's me again looking like a Pathan, and all these people who were fighters. And this is a picture, it's again in Pakistan, at Bari Imam. There's an incredible place in Islamabad where one of the great-grandchildren of Imam Hassan, and maybe Imam Hussein, the Prophet's grandson, is buried there. And everybody comes there on Thursday nights, and there's wonderful activity and langa, and really wonderful experience. And this is another place where one of the descendants of the Prophet was running away from the Abbasids, and he wound up being in this place near Uch Sharif. It's a very amazing place. You should look it up in Pakistan. Amazing, amazing place. But there's a pole. You see that pole there on the left-hand side? There's a pole there that he told them, if you remove that pole, a flood will come and destroy your people and all that. And I won't go into it, but something amazing happened. And this is the place where he was buried. And that's another sort of, picture which I didn't want to show people. I'd probably be arrested by the FBI somewhere if I had that public. But it's in my book. And again, this is another one, Sheikh Bashir Uthman Bashir. He was a great wali from Eritrea. Incredible being, incredible insight, many stories about him as well. And Sheikh Muhammad ibn al-Habib, a great being, great poet, great in every way. I can't begin to talk too much about him. And my meeting with one of his murids and his tomb there, again, it's covered in the book. And also this is one of his descendants, and he was giving me idhn here to carry on the tariq of this group. And then this is Sheikh Falala Hairi, who is, to this day, he's presently still alive and lives he's 88 years old, and he lives reclusively in South Africa. I think that's and I know maybe someone, you may know him, Sheikh Muzaffar Ozark from Turkey. He used to come to America all the time, and I spent many days and nights with him. Amazing being, amazing being. This is, remember I told you that group of people I had met originally? This is what they looked like, when I met them. So incredibly impressive. These are all French and American and Scottish, and there's one Moroccan guy. And they took on the Moroccan style. But that's not what of course, Islam is not a culture. It's not a style. it's a transformative way of life. It brings you to the highest state, inshallah. And this was Sheikh Abdul Qadir, who was the original person who wrote the book, The Way of Muhammad, that really was a catalyst and a vehicle for me to finally embrace Islam. Sheikh Asif Drakovic, another incredible being these are all beings of light. He was from Bosnia-Herzegovina, incredible being. And this is, I used to sing at the international Knot conferences in Pakistan. They invited me to sing there. And this was me singing at that group. And this is a blurred picture, but at one point we were kind of crazy Americans. We got a big Winnebago mobile home, and 4 or 5 of us would go and we would just travel all around the country, and we would go to the quad of a university and give the adhan and talk to people about the deen. And it was very short-lived, but about several people joined us from this experience. This is at Ut Sharif, Pakpatan with Baba Farid. These are all well-known characters. Let me just go back to Sheikh Fadlallah and leave it there for now. So I just wanted to give you tonight, very spontaneously, I didn't know really what stories I was going to tell, to give you just a flavor of what's in the book, but more so, it's not about the book. What it's about is examining your concepts of what life, and our concepts of what life is, and how there's another dynamic behind this veil of our expectations, of our identifications, and not to lose heart, and not to despair in the mercy of Allah. When you think that all of a sudden everything is heading towards a bottleneck and you don't know what's going to happen, if you are in trust and in a good state, whatever happened will be the best will happen. It'll come to you in a way that you have no idea. And I know for sure, everybody in this room, for one way or another, has experienced something like that. So it's real. But we forget it. Yes, trust in Allah, but tie your camel. Well, trust in Allah and tie your camel, yeah. Don't leave out the trust in Allah. Don't be busy tying your camel all the time. Trust in Allah and tie your camel. Have amana wa amilu salih, have united with your inner iman and your outer action. To be in that state is the best state that you can be in, and it's really all that we're asked to do. Assalamu alaikum. So I want to open it up if it's okay, and if anybody wants to leave, please feel free. There's no formality here or anything. We just wanted to be together and share this, and if there's anything you'd like to comment or say or share, whatever, please feel free.
If there's one thing I'd like everyone to go back with tonight, if there's one thing, it's not so much about the religion, it's not so much about not that, and it's not so much about the practices. We are so blinded in our everyday rituals, and when I say rituals, I mean our daily activities and perhaps in our prayer as well, that we forget, because we did know at one part that all of this is an illusion. And if I want you to go back with one point, that there is a greater reality out there, a greater reality of work, a greater presence. And if there is a greater presence, how do we wake up to that presence? And to wake up to the presence, Sheikh shared it in a couple of ways. It's trust in Allah, trust in God, trust in higher power, tie a camel. But there's another way to look at it and phrase it. How do we wake up to the greater presence? How do we be there? And the way that connects with me, the opening chapter of the Quran, Surah Fatiha, it starts in the name of Allah, the name of God, the most beneficent, the most merciful. All praise to God, Master of the worlds, the beneficent, the merciful, Master of the Day of Judgment. Great. After that, what? What? Iyaka na'budu wa iyaka nasta'in. And there is parallels of this in the Lord's Prayer and Gayatri Mantra. What's the message? To you we worship. To you we submit. To you we give up our will and submit to your will. After that, what? Is that enough? No. And then to you we strive. To you we ask for help. To you we give our utmost. It's only to you we submit, to you ask for help. So if you want to be connected with that greater reality, if you want to be reminded, if you want to break free from the illusions, when there are moments when your heart wakes up, submit to that. And submitting is not enough. Then strive like the strive you've never strove before. And then if you're lucky, you may have some experiences as some people, maybe Hajj Mustafa have, or maybe you won't. That's not the point. You will nonetheless still experience the greater reality. So anyway, that was my theme and reflection as I was reading Sheikh's book. That each time there was an experience, there was a moment that I don't know what to do, and there was a moment of submission and a moment of striving. And we submit to our utmost and strive to our utmost. So with that, we have time for perhaps 2 or 3 questions. So if anybody has questions for Sheikh Haj Mustafa or Sheikh Muslim from Sweden, make most of this opportunity. If anything, don't let this go. Will not take time, maybe just 2 or 3 questions. Do I see any hands up? And Ali can go around the mic. Please, Aslam Bhai, and then Dr. Badami. We'll take these 2 questions and then one more
Hello.
from the ladies.
So as far as what I understand, we're not supposed to go to graves. I saw one of the dargah or whatever was there. I don't know, how do we explain that? You know, anything other than Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, we don't go to the other graves. Maximum we can go is Janatul Baqi and Janatul Mawla in Makkah. We go to our own graveyards, that's okay. But to go to somebody else for some kind of, pay some, I don't know, it's sort of, is it allowed, or what's your feeling on this?
I feel good about it. I mean, I don't have any problem with that. And there's been in the history of Muslims, this has been often a very common practice. People went for inspiration. There were many awliya also, ordinary people also. They left behind places where people can come and they'll have Quran lessons there, they'll feed people, they have langa, they have service, they have doctors who are helping. These places became a place to serve the community. And it's just in recent times all these I don't know how to put it without being, there's been a hardening of the hearts of Muslims around the world. Hardening. People, there was when I first became Muslim and I was celebrating the Prophet's birthday, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Why? It was just out of love, period. And people would come, no, it's haram to celebrate. You never celebrated his birthday. If you have love, you do things that it doesn't necessarily have to be within the context of deen and fiqh and all of this. It's an act of a heart. Is your mother still alive?
No, sorry.
Do you ever go visit her grave?
I do.
Does it touch your heart?
Do you
remember all the good things she did for you?
Sure,
yes,
we do that.
This is the shifa of going to the grave. If you go to a grave that it touches you because it reminds you of the good things that other people have done and maybe inspires you to do the same. And I'm not a scholar of fiqh and all this stuff, so I'm not going to answer you in any other way. Because I've been through that in my life with people who have this very narrow perspective. It's not my deen, and if I'm condemned by that, that's fine.
No, you mentioned about Prophet's birthday. They said, what I understand, I've spent some time in Saudi Arabia. They say what Prophet didn't do, that's bidah. Bidah means it's an invention, which is not allowed in Islam.
Okay, you write a book, tell everybody. I have no answer for that. I follow the way of love and the way of my heart, and I know enough of my deen from my own practice of it to know that these things are fine. It's about your intention and why you go to these places. I don't care about all that. I don't care what the mullahs say. The mullahs scare the hell out of our young people to pray and to do this, and they make the deen to them a bitter thing instead of a sweet thing. Why would we listen to these people?
Assalamu alaikum, Haj Mustafa.
Wa alaikum
It
salam.
was a wonderful lecture listening to you. I have lived my whole life with one saying of Socrates: the unexamined life is not worth living.
Allah.
And my question to you is this. It deals with the justice of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Many of us, most of us here are Muslims. Do you not feel that we have been privileged to be born as Muslims, and those who are Christians or Jews of any other religion, for example? So do you not find that there is a discrimination at the level of birth? And to this I would add an unsaid answer that we as Muslims are very ungrateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But that doesn't, my question to you is that you have been a convert, and that is why I am asking you this question. You call yourself a revert or convert, leave the terminology, okay, but that we are born as Muslims. Islam was given to us from our parents. We learned the Quran, we learned the method, we learned the prayers, okay, and we also delve into the Nahjul Balagha, the Sahif Sajjadiya, we learned the method, the mystical method, the Irfan, the Gnosis, and we were privileged. What about a large section of humanity who were born as Jews or Christians or as Hindus, for example? Do you not feel that this is a kind of a discrimination at the level of creation? Thank you.
Because every human being has a rule bil amri rabbi. Every human being, whether they've heard the deen or they haven't heard the deen, that somehow the idea that person who's never heard or whatever, it's a kind of an injustice, impossible. Because even though they may not know it, within them resides the light and the nur of Allah within them. Allah nur samawati wal ard. And every human being will come to their Creator with what they did and how they lived. And it is Allah's decree upon them at that moment where their final abode is. It has nothing to do with our conceptual idea, oh, they didn't get the deen or they didn't do this and they're probably going to go to the fire and oh, these poor people. I don't see that paradigm. I don't see that paradigm at all. I see that we're all إِذَا جَاءَ نَصْرُ اللَّهِ وَالْفَتْحُ وَرَأَيْتَ النَّاسَ يَدْخُلُونَ فِي دِينِ اللَّهِ أَفْوَاجًا فَسَبِّحْ بِحَمْدِ رَبِّكَ وَاسْتَغْفِرْ إِنَّهُ كَانَ تَوَّابًا. I see the flow of humanity towards the light of Allah. Now we see things in time, and so your question is important. We live in time, we live in a situation where there is injustice. So you have to amr bil ma'ruf wa nahy wal munkar. You have to practice guiding to the good and forbidding and advising against evil. This is something we have to do, all of us. But ultimately, ultimate justice, ultimate mercy, no doubt, everybody comes within the embrace of Allah's mercy and within His mercy. So I'm not concerned. I see nothing but 100% justice. I mean, you look at these faces from Gaza, right? People who are broken, smashed, bloodied. You all know, I don't have to go through the description. But at the very same time, their hearts, a good enough amount of them, are Hasbunallahu wa ni'mal wakeel. And their reward is greater than it can be for most, because they are in the middle of that type of hammer on them. They're still remembering Allah and still having that reliance on His mercy and His adl, His justice. So it's hard to do as a human being. It's very hard. because you experience things in time and space, you see the injustices, you see the difficulties, you want to help, you want to do, but what can you do? You can only do what you can do. You know, there's that you mentioned the first ayah of Surah Al-Baqarah. It ends with وَرَزَقْنَاهُمْ يُنْفِقُونَ. From what we give you, you give out. You can't do any more. You can only give with what Allah gives you, and you give it out. And that's all that you're asked to do. What else can you do? I don't know. I hope that answers your question.
I have a question.
We'll take one last question from Sister Aisha. Can all of you hear Sheikh? Because some can hear and something there.
That your talk came as a breath of fresh air after many years, which is talking about uniting Muslims rather than dividing, making it inclusive, making Islam inclusive rather than exclusive, and also rising beyond the paradigm of just following Islam and the rituals. It goes far beyond, and what you said about Izaja, like we wish to see every human being being drawn towards Allah in some way or the other. It's not, our intelligence is limited to think that it's only if you are this kind of Muslim and that kind of Muslim you're going to be drawn. Or sometimes you even think if you're a Muslim at all, you cannot judge till the person actually passes away whether he accepted or not. And we have to give humanity a chance. So that, I think, we realize after we grow to our senior years, but we hope to spread this word of inclusivity even among our youth, who are I think it's getting better now, but a few years back it was all about exclusivity and not inclusivity. Like either you're with us or you're not among us. So I'm really happy to hear this talk of yours, which we hope will spread to more people and talk about inclusivity and love rather than hardening of hearts and hate because they don't belong to a certain group. Thank you very much.
You're very, very welcome.
Yeah, and my question would be, to get the kind of miracles that you came across in life, does it require a certain amount of spirituality, or
No, you just have to be.
Can any human being? Because the kind of life you led is not the kind of life we can lead.
It's true. But everybody's life is the same. My life was full of these miraculous, incredible turns of destiny and degree, all of that. It was when people ask me, well, how is it that happened to you? And I tell you, I know the answer to that. And that's not because I'm special or anything like that. Is that I know that the nafs that Allah, that I had, or whatever, it's in a process. So I can't say it's on both of this. That it requires a bit of a good knock here and there, a good wake-up call. People, we need that. I needed these things to happen, to keep me on the path, to move me along, to make me grow and evolve in a spiritual sense. But it's no different than anybody else. Everybody else is doing the same thing, but in their own unique way. And I want to leave you with one thing that that Sheikh Fadlallah particularly was my mentor really in his life. One of the things he said to me is he said, remember that we're all the same, no matter who we are, whether you're Muslim, Buddhist, Hindu, Christian, Jew, whatever. Everybody has the light of God in them. You can't deny that. Everybody has a ruh bil amri rabbi. And if you meet creation with that vision, whoever comes in front of you, first don't see them as a worker, a Jew or a Christian or a Hindu. First, see them as a soul bil amri rabbi. Remind yourself, this is a being that Allah gave permission to exist. And who the hell do you think you are?
Exactly.
Let this person come. And you never know that if you enter into that state of visioning that person as a soul, as a being, a sacred being, whatever they're calling themselves, then can act by inspiration. By Allah will give you that moment to behave in such a way, to emanate in a certain way, to be and radiate to that person in a certain way, the most appropriate thing you can do. And that is a connection of love between that person. Now, if that person misbehaves, then you have to call them out on their behavior. Don't do that. That's, that's wrong. Don't do that. But initially, and even when they're doing that, still you see your enemy as yourself. You see them as a soul, and that one thing that I want to mention to the young people here is that when you do that, because if you start doing that, you'll see that it informs your nafs structure, yourself. It diminishes yourself. It lowers the ego. Because when you see everyone as yourself, that shaitanic words, ana khayru min, I'm better than he is. I've got a nicer car, I got a better girlfriend, whatever it is all rubbish. If you look at everybody from the eye of ana khayru minhum, then you're lost. If you look at them, that this person is Allah brought to you as a rub al-amri rabbi, then you're beginning at the right spot.
Thank you, Jazakallah.
You're welcome.
Mohsin,
Thank you.
if you can keep it short, please, Mohsin.
Yeah, I'll keep it short. Actually, Sister Aisha, I want to say something to you and I'll probably make people laugh. You said that miracles happen to people with some level of spirituality. Okay, so those of you who visit Bangalore and you've probably come for the first time, if you see the traffic around, you would ask, how is it that you guys don't meet up with several traffic jams? So we come across several miracles every day that we survive the Bangalore traffic. Okay, but since it's a night of lots of stories, I want to say one story, and I'm sure you would enjoy what I'm about to say. And this is a real life experience that happened to me in December on New Year's Eve. Some of my friends over here already know about it, and it is something very, very close to my heart. Mohsin bhai, I haven't told you about this, but I tell you many things, but this I haven't told you. So this is a very, very interesting thing, and this story really rose my spirituality level. So up north on the eastern side of Iran, there's this city called Mashhad, and there's this holy shrine of the 8th Imam, Imam Ali ibn Musa Raza, the 8th generation after the Prophet Muhammad. So he has this massive big shrine, and I happened to get an opportunity to visit him in December. So I have a cousin over here in Bangalore. Her name is Mariam. She said, Mohsin, my name is Mohsin, okay? So she said, when you come back, please get for me a carpet, a used carpet of the haram, of the holy shrine. And I said, all right, fine, no problem. And she said, don't come without it. I said, okay, no problem. So this was New Year's Eve, 31st December. I went, I bought a carpet, and it was 8 kilos. So I said, oh my God, this is heavy. And I have to come back all the way to Bangalore. So I bought this carpet, and I kept it on the road, and called for a taxi, and we hit straight to the train station. We reached the train station, unloaded our luggage, only to realize that the carpet is missing. This is 31st December, all right? From 7 p.m. Tehran time till 10 p.m., I'm angry at myself, and I really want to hit myself. How the hell did this happen? I was very embarrassed. I didn't know what to tell Mariam, okay? So at 10 p.m., I recollected that there was this one new friend I met at this holy shrine. He was a mamuli, normal guy. He was like a watchman. His name is Muhammad. So with my broken Persian, and with the help of my wife, who speaks fluent Persian, we called Muhammad, and then we said, this has happened. And I had taken a picture after I purchased the carpet, and I said, it happened at this location. I kept the carpet here, and it's probably gone missing. Muhammad said, all right, Basha in Farsi means, okay, no problem. Next morning, and I'm in Tehran the next morning, and I forget about this, but in my heart, I had this feeling that, okay, I am going to get the carpet somehow. Now see the ways, the divine help of God. 5 days later, I get a call from Muhammad, and he speaks to me very, very excited, and he says, Agha Mohsin, send me your address in Tehran, and I'm going to send you the carpet. I said, what the hell happened? He said, I'm on duty, sorry, I can't reply. Call me back later in the night, and I'll tell you what happened. So this is what happened. On 1st of January, Muhammad visited that spot, and then he looked for the carpet. He asked the shopkeepers around if they found the carpet. They said no. He left behind his phone number with one or two of the shopkeepers, and then he said, if you find something, please let me know. 5 days later, one of the shopkeepers calls Muhammad, And he says, please come and take the carpet. Muhammad goes rushing over there and he asks the shopkeeper, how did you find the carpet? The shopkeeper, this is the interesting part, the shopkeeper, he's a mamuli guy, he's selling, I think, juice and ice cream, stuff like that. So the shopkeeper narrates the story. He says, a car comes by and the driver comes out and takes the carpet and keeps it at the very same spot. This shopkeeper sees the car driver and then he goes up to him and then he says, why are you leaving the carpet over here? And then he says, in Farsi, he says, in male man nist, which means this is not my belonging. And I picked it up from here. It belonged to somebody else. The moment I took it to my house, I've been having trouble with my wife, with my family, with everybody else. So this is bad luck, bad omen to me. I'm bringing it back. So he brought it back. Muhammad gets his call, and then finally I get the carpet back.
MashaAllah.
When I get the carpet, my niyat changes. And I tell Maryam, sorry, this is not yours anymore. And Maryam calls my mother up, and then my mother shouts at me, and then finally I give the carpet back to Maria.
Yeah.
So this really raised my spiritual level very much. I had this conviction in myself that I am going to get it somehow, and divine ways. Arif, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you. The great story.
With this, we bring in evening to close. So, just as a vote of thanks, I want to thank all the people who helped in organize the event. Pavel Bhai for bringing Haji Mustafa. Big thanks to Rajesh, Mohsin, and Rajta, but especially to Rajesh who put all these arrangements together. So, thank you very much, Rajesh.
Thank you.
Dinner is served behind, and Haji Mustafa will be seated there. You can purchase a copy of the book. If you buy it online and Amazon, a hard copy of the book, I think it costs around 1,500 to 2,000 rupees, but it's only available in US. We're selling the copies over here just for 300 rupees. There are limited copies. I think there are 40, and out of which 2 are sold, so there's just 38 at the moment. So if you want a copy, and especially a signed copy, you can pick it up and Sheikh will be happy to sign for you. We will end with a dua, so I will request Sheikh Muslim to introduce himself. People ask him, who's Sheikh Muslim, so you can just introduce yourself, and then please recite a dua for us, and after that the evening ends. Can I have the mic to Sheikh Muslim?
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Well, I'm not going to tell you a story. I think I have a few stories to tell as well, but that will be maybe some other time. But I know Haj Mustafa from a fair few years, and every moment spent with him is really a moment of wonder, you know. So I listen to these stories, I've heard them before, but every time I hear them, it's like I hear them for the first time. It really touches me as well. And it is really about opening your heart. Opening your heart and let the love and the light of God enter into your heart. Once you do that, magic things happen. But I just thought we'll end with a dua. To ask Allah to open our hearts and to fill our hearts with love for Him, with love for His Prophet, with love for each other, with love for humanity, and to enlighten our hearts with the nur, with the light of His ma'rifah, of His knowledge, as the purpose of the whole of creation is that we should get to know Him. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب. ربنا هب لنا من أزواجنا وذرياتنا قرة أعين واجعلنا للمتقين إماما. رب اجعلني مقيم الصلاة ومن ذريتي. ربنا وتقبل دعاء. ربنا اغفر لي ولوالدي وللمؤمنين يوم يقوم الحساب. رب ارحمهما كما ربياني صغيرا. رب أوزعني أن أشكر نعمتك التي أنعمت علي وعلى والدي وأن أعمل صالحا ترضاه وأصلح لي في ذريتي إني تبت إليك وإني من المسلمين. ربنا اغفر لنا ولإخواننا الذين سبقونا بالإيمان ولا تجعل في قلوبنا غلا للذين آمنوا ربنا إنك رؤوف رحيم. يا حي يا قيوم يا ذا الجلال والإكرام يا الله يا رحمن. Ya Allah, we ask you to give us all something to take with us from this gathering, from this meeting, that make our heart open that one bit more to make us that one bit closer to you, one bit closer to get to know you, and one bit closer to be at peace and harmony within ourselves, between each other, and with our Master, our Creator, with Allah. And we'll end with Surah Al-Fatiha. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Maliki yawmiddin. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sheikh Hussain.